So after being on the floor and speaking as well at RSA and talking to a lot of our customers, prospects, and peers, what I hear consistently are folks that think their third-party risk program works, but when you dig a little deeper there, they still have concerns and their confidence isn't as high as what it actually should be if their third-party risk program was working. So I think that's one of the biggest takeaways. When you really look at the data and what happens when a third-party breach occurs, people are scrambling, they're concerned, they're asking the questions, are we breached, are we affected? Through a poll we did, about 90% of practitioners said they really don't trust the third-party risk program. So while you have companies or practitioners say, yeah, our third party's risk is effective, and another 90% saying they don't have trust in the program, you can't square that circle. You've got to send questionnaires to show that your vendor risk management program is functioning, but no, it doesn't really reduce risk. Many times those questions aren't really relevant to risk, especially given what the context is. And other times questionnaires have 300 questions on them, right? And I've asked this directly to practitioners, like, when you get the questionnaire back, what are you doing with it? And they're filing it in a storage device somewhere, never to be seen again, right? So the idea here is, I'm not saying questionnaires are not inevitable. They are part of the process and have to be done. But what I've seen most effective organizations use the questionnaire to get deeper and build relationships, especially with those critical vendors. On initial discovery with a lot of our customers and prospects, we ask the question, how many vendors do you think you have? And usually that number is at a significant magnification of what they really think. So they say, yeah, we've got 100 vendors. But when you dig in and talk to them about who their vendors are and what they're doing, they really don't have a realistic understanding of how many vendors they have. And they don't have a good understanding of how critical those vendors are. So that's the two biggest things that I see in the market right now in organizations, is that visibility process of the number of vendors is not correct. And then the criticality of those vendors, they haven't even taken that step to figure out who impacts them the most. When you do those questionnaires, that assessment, and as I said, you get those back and you file it away, that's a point in time assessment, even if it's true. And as we all know, we're all in dynamic environments. Things are changing on a minute by minute basis. And when you're assessing a vendor or even your own environment, when you do it in that point in time, in the next 5 minutes, the environment could change, and it could change so drastically that you open yourself up to considerable exploitation and compromise. Threat actors are looking for that, right? Threat actors are scanning for those things all the time, and especially if they have some type of specific motivation. If you take the current Iran situation where some of those threat actors are targeting specific companies, well, now they're doing even further deep diving into those companies. So attackers are looking at our attack surface continuously, nonstop. And that's what we need to be doing in our third-party risk program. Continuous can't mean to the questionnaire once a year, right? And many people, that's the definition of continuous. That's not the definition of continuous or where it should be today in third-party risk. This should be 24/7, minute-by-minute scanning or assessing of our vendors and making sure that our vendors and ourselves are meeting the standards that we put in place. You then get to a place where now you're thinking about your third-party risk program, not as a compliance-driven function or effort, but as a security-driven effort. And so for Security Scorecard with the Titan AI platform, what we're doing is adding things like AI and threat intelligence into that continuous assessment process. So it's allowing us to do things like scale at how we have assessed those vendors, not only third party, but think also about fourth party. Like a lot of companies, they're having trouble with third party risk. They're not even venturing into fourth party risk. And so AI can help us really scale that and do the things that a human by themselves can't do. And when you add threat intelligence on the top of that, now we're looking at targeted attacks on our vendors and their vendors' vendors. For Security Scorecard, with all the data that we collect, 13 years worth of data, honestly, what we see through our historical analysis of that data is how certain vendors are more susceptible to breaches and ransomware than others. And that's just a fact of life. When you take all the threat intelligence into context and apply it to vendors, now you're not just looking at those questionnaire compliance-driven mindset of, do they encrypt their data, those sorts of things. We're also looking at, is this vendor really susceptible to a breach? We're looking also at the threat intelligence and how we use AI to pull all that data and assign it to that vendor ecosystem. And the outcome really is what we all as risk practitioners are trying to get to, is really reducing risk for our organization. A Security Scorecard is obviously empowering our Titan AI platform with AI agents and AI capabilities, where what we do is take the manual labor that your team's doing in the third-party risk program and allow our platform to do those things for you, even questionnaire delivery and response, follow-up, how we do alerting, how we do rule sets, how we apply that to other tools inside of our organizations through integrations, and allow our platform to drive a lot of that manual practice for customers. So then they can focus, they can start doing things that are strategic. I'm Steve Cobb, and this is the Security Scorecard Weekly Brief, the CISO edition, where we break down the biggest stories in cybersecurity, shaping how we defend over 3,000 organizations and critical infrastructure in today's interconnected digital world.